"This seat isn't meant for people like you." The words weren't whispered. They were delivered with the casual confidence of someone who had never been told no in her life. Victoria Blackwell, her cream linen suit unwrinkled despite the airport chaos, looked at the young black woman in the hoodie like she was examining something distasteful that had attached itself to her shoe. What Victoria didn't know was that in exactly 13 minutes, she would be escorted off the plane by security, her lifetime platinum membership revoked, while the CEO of the airline personally apologized to the woman she had just insulted. The controlled chaos of JFK's Terminal 4 was a symphony Amara Jenkins knew well. The frantic clicks of roller bags against polished floors, the multilingual announcements echoing from unseen speakers, the low hum of thousands of intersecting journeys. It was the soundtrack of her life. Yet to any casual observer, she was just another face in the river of humanity flowing towards the gates. Dressed in a simple charcoal gray cashmere hoodie, tailored black joggers, and a pair of unassuming but meticulously crafted sneakers, Amara projected an aura of deliberate anonymity. Her hair was styled in intricate box braids that cascaded over her shoulders, adorned with a few subtle gold cuffs that caught the light. There was no flashy luggage, no ostentatious designer logos screaming for attention, just a sleek minimalist black leather backpack slung over one shoulder, containing a laptop that held the blueprints for technologies poised to redefine the future of aviation. At 29, Amara, or Mara to her inner circle, was the founder and CEO of Quantum Velocity, a name that was whispered with a mixture of awe and envy in the exclusive circles of aerospace and technology. Her company, which she had built from a single algorithm she coded in her college dorm room, was now a titan in satellite communication and predictive flight logistics. She was a billionaire several times over, but she wore her success like she wore her clothes, comfortably without the need for external validation. Her journey today was from New York to London, a routine flight on TransAtlantic Airways flight TA492. This trip, however, was anything but routine. On the other end awaited a consortium of European investors, a final handshake on a deal that would inject another $7 billion into her latest venture. A revolutionary system for real-time atmospheric data analysis that promised to make air travel exponentially safer and more efficient. As she navigated through the priority check-in line, she noticed the subtle glances she received. They weren't looks of recognition, but of assessment. A young black woman in the first-class line, dressed in what appeared to be loungewear, often triggered a silent, judgmental calculus in the minds of others. She'd seen it 1,000 times, the flicker of surprise, the faint curl of a lip, the mental sorting into categories where she seemingly didn't belong. She had long ago stopped letting it bother her. Their ignorance was a shield for her, allowing her to move through the world unburdened by the suffocating weight of fame. She handed her passport to the agent, who gave her a professionally bland smile. "Good afternoon, Ms. Jenkins. Window seat 1A. You're all set. The Horizon Lounge is to your right, just past security. Boarding for your flight will begin in approximately 45 minutes at gate B24. "Thank you," Amara said, her voice calm and melodic. She bypassed the lounge. She preferred the quiet anonymity of the public seating area, where she could observe the beautiful, messy tapestry of humanity without interruption. She found a seat near her gate, pulled out a worn paperback novel, a classic sci-fi by Octavia Butler, and submerged herself in its world, the airport symphony fading into a distant murmur. She was a ghost, a silent observer, a woman of immense power hiding in plain sight. It was her preferred mode of existence, but she knew that sometimes the world forced you to reveal your hand. As the boarding call for flight TA492 finally echoed through the terminal, Amara closed her book, tucked it into her backpack, and stood up. She had a $7 billion deal to close and an ocean to cross. She walked toward the gate, completely unaware that her carefully constructed shield of anonymity was about to be shattered not by a business rival or a journalist, but by the casual, ingrained prejudice of a fellow passenger in seat 1A. What would happen in exactly 13 minutes would change the course of aviation history, transform corporate policy across an entire industry, and remind the world that power doesn't always announce itself with fanfare. Sometimes it arrives in a hoodie with quiet dignity and the patience to wait for the perfect moment to reveal itself. The first-class cabin of the Boeing 777 was an oasis of muted grays and soft lighting designed to soothe the nerves of the world's elite travelers. The scent of warm towels and a faint hint of champagne hung in the air. Amara offered a small smile to the flight attendant greeting passengers at the door and made her way down the short aisle to the front row. Seat 1A. Her seat, a private pod with a lie-flat bed, a personal minibar, and a wide entertainment screen. More importantly, it was the window seat she had specifically chosen months in advance for its privacy, but it was occupied. Victoria Blackwell looked to be in her late 50s, comfortably settled in her designer handbag placed on the adjacent seat 1B. She had perfectly coiffed blonde hair, a face tightened by expensive procedures, and was dressed in a crisp, cream-colored linen suit that looked completely out of place for a long-haul flight. A heavy gold bracelet dangled from her wrist, catching the light whenever she gestured, which was often and with flourish. Her nails were manicured to gleaming perfection, painted in a shade that precisely matched her lipstick. The kind of coordinated detail that spoke of someone with too much time and too much money. She was loudly detailing her recent trip to the Hamptons to another passenger across the aisle, her voice laced with a sense of effortless superiority. The names of celebrities and politicians peppered her monologue, each one dropped with practiced casualness as if these powerful people were simply old friends she bumped into at the grocery store. Of course, when the senator heard I was hosting, he insisted on bringing his wife along too. I told him, "Darling, my guest list is already bursting with people who matter. But you know how these politicians are, always networking." The passenger across the aisle, an older gentleman, nodded politely, though his eyes betrayed a growing weariness with the conversation. Victoria seemed not to notice or care. Amara paused, checked her boarding pass again, 1A, and then looked at Victoria. She waited for a natural pause in the conversation, but one didn't seem to be forthcoming. "Excuse me?" Amara said politely, her voice quiet but clear. Victoria stopped mid-sentence and turned her head slowly, her eyes scanning Amara from her sneakers to her hoodie with a look of undisguised disdain. It was a practiced, withering glance designed to make its recipient feel small and insignificant. "Yes." Victoria's tone was sharp, impatient. "I believe you're in my seat," Amara said, holding up her boarding pass. Victoria glanced at the ticket in Amara's hand and then waved a dismissive hand as if shooing away a fly. "Oh, that must be a mistake. I always sit here. The airline knows. Just find another seat, dear. I'm sure there are plenty of others." She then turned back to her conversation, the matter clearly settled in her mind. Amara stood her ground. "I don't think it's a mistake. My pass says 1A. Could you please check yours?" With an exaggerated theatrical sigh, Victoria fished a ticket from her handbag. She glanced at it for a fraction of a second. "It says 1B, but that's ridiculous. I need the window. The lighting is better for my complexion." Besides, she added, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that was intentionally loud enough for Amara to hear. "I think you'd be more comfortable somewhere else. These seats are for our most loyal customers." The implication was thick and suffocating. "You are not one of us. You do not belong here." Amara felt a familiar weary tightening in her chest, but her expression remained impassive. "Loyalty status doesn't change a seat assignment. I booked this seat specifically. I'd appreciate it if you would move to your assigned seat." Her calm, firm tone seemed to infuriate Victoria. The woman's face flushed a blotchy red. "Now listen here. I am a Platinum Diamond Elite member with this airline. I've spent more money on flights this year than you've probably earned in your life. I am not moving. End of story." The conversation had now attracted the attention of a flight attendant. A young man named Michael Wilson, with a forced customer service smile plastered on his face, approached them. "Is there a problem here, ladies?" Michael asked, his voice pitched to project calm authority, but his eyes darting nervously between the two women. Victoria immediately seized the opportunity, transforming into a frail victim. "Oh, thank goodness. This young woman is harassing me. She's insisting this is her seat when clearly there's been a mix-up. I always have the window seat. Always. Just check your system." Michael turned to Amara, his expression already shifting subtly toward doubt. "Ma'am, do you have your boarding pass?" Amara wordlessly handed over her ticket. Michael examined it, his brow furrowing slightly. "This does say seat 1A, he acknowledged, but then quickly added, "But perhaps we could find you another comfortable seat. We're about to close the doors, and it's important we depart on time." From the galley, another flight attendant watched the exchange with growing interest. Elena Rodriguez, 34, had been with TransAtlantic for 9 years and had developed a sixth sense for cabin dynamics. Something about the young woman in the hoodie struck her as familiar, though she couldn't immediately place why. Unlike Michael, who saw only the casual dress and assumed the woman was a lucky upgrade. Elena noticed the quiet confidence, the unruffled dignity in the face of rudeness. This wasn't someone unused to first class. This was someone unused to having to prove she belonged there. The ticket clearly states 1A. Amara repeated calmly. "That's the seat I booked and paid for." Victoria rolled her eyes dramatically. "Oh, please. Paid for. As if. Listen, sweetie, I know an upgrade when I see one. Some computer glitch probably bumped you up from economy, but that doesn't mean you can displace regular first-class passengers who actually belong here." Michael shifted uncomfortably, clearly wanting the situation resolved quickly rather than correctly. "Perhaps you'd be willing to take 2A. It's also a window seat and very comfortable." "I booked 1A specifically." Amara interrupted, her voice still measured but firmer now. "Not because of status or upgrades, but because I need the privacy of that particular seat for work purposes." Work purposes. Victoria scoffed, looking Amara up and down again. What kind of work could possibly require a specific seat? Are you an air marshal? A flight reviewer for some budget travel blog? She laughed at her own joke, looking to Michael for approval. Elena stepped forward slightly, sensing the situation was deteriorating. She caught Michael's eye, silently urging him to check the passenger manifest more carefully. There was something about the name Jenkins that was tugging at her memory. Something from a company briefing about VIP passengers. But Michael had already made his decision, prioritizing the quick solution over the right one. "I understand your frustration, Ms. Jenkins, but in the interest of departing on time, would you consider taking another seat just for today? We can certainly note this in your customer profile and ensure it doesn't happen again." The message was clear. The comfort and preferences of Victoria Blackwell Platinum Diamond Elite member outweighed the valid ticket and assigned seat of Amara Jenkins, regardless of what was printed on her boarding pass. Amara looked from Michael to Victoria and back again, her expression unreadable. "I see," she said finally. It wasn't acceptance. It was recognition of a pattern she had encountered countless times before, a familiar dance of prejudice disguised as procedure of bias, masked as protocol. And in that moment, while appearing calm to all observers, Amara made a decision. This time, the dance would have a different ending. Victoria turned back to arrange her belongings, acting as if the matter was settled. She picked up her handbag from seat 1B and placed it on the floor with exaggerated care, then gestured to the seat as if bestowing a great favor. "There you go. 1B. It's actually closer to the aisle, which I'd think would be more convenient for you anyway." Amara didn't move. "I understand you've been assigned 1B. That's your seat. My ticket is for 1A, which you're currently occupying." Victoria's smile tightened. She reached into her handbag and pulled out her boarding pass again, this time actually looking at it. A flicker of recognition crossed her face. She had indeed been assigned 1B, but it was quickly replaced by stubborn determination. Well, there's clearly been a mistake. I specifically requested 1A when I made my reservation. I always sit by the window. The reservation agent must have entered it incorrectly. That may be, Amara replied evenly, but the current assignment has me in 1A. If you'd like to sort this out with the airline for future flights, I understand. But for today, I need to take my assigned seat. By now, other first-class passengers were openly watching the exchange. A few had expressions of discomfort, while others seemed morbidly fascinated by the confrontation unfolding before them. Victoria's voice rose slightly. "Do you have any idea who I am?" "I'm Victoria Blackwell, Senior Vice President at Pinnacle Financial Group. I manage the portfolios of people who could buy and sell your entire existence 100 times over. I've flown over 200,000 miles with this airline this year alone, none of which changes the seat assignment." Amara pointed out, her tone still remarkably calm. "I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm simply asking for the seat I booked." From across the aisle, a man in his early 40s had discreetly taken out his phone and begun recording. Jackson Palmer was a travel blogger with over 500,000 followers, known for his honest reviews of airlines and luxury hotels. He had witnessed similar situations before and knew exactly what he was seeing. "I'm filming this," he said quietly to the passenger next to him, then a bit louder. "This is being documented." Victoria shot him a venomous look. "Mind your own business." "Actually," Jackson replied, "as someone who covers the travel industry, how airlines treat their passengers is precisely my business." "Michael." The flight attendant, sensing the situation spiraling, tried to regain control. "Please, sir, recording other passengers without their consent is against our policy. Recording discriminatory treatment, however, is protected activity," interjected a new voice. Sophia Garcia, a 38-year-old lawyer seated in 2C, had been watching with growing concern. "And what I'm witnessing right now is a clear case of preferential treatment based on perceived status and appearance." Victoria's face contorted with indignation. "This has nothing to do with appearance. This is about proper procedure and respecting loyal customers." "Then the proper procedure would be to check the seat assignments and have passengers sit in their assigned seats," Sophia countered calmly. "Which, from what I can see, is exactly what this young woman is trying to do." Michael looked increasingly distressed. This was supposed to be a simple seat dispute easily resolved with a polite request and perhaps a free drink as compensation. Instead, it was becoming a public relations nightmare with witnesses and recordings. "Let me get my supervisor," he said, retreating toward the galley. Amara hadn't moved, hadn't raised her voice, hadn't shown any outward sign of the frustration she must have been feeling. This stillness, this control was what caught Elena Rodriguez's attention more than anything. Most passengers in this situation would be gesticulating, raising their voices, demanding to speak to someone in charge. This woman stood perfectly composed, as if she had all the time in the world, as if the outcome was already determined. The memory clicked into place for Elena. 3 days ago, during the pre-flight briefing, there had been a special notification about a VIP passenger on today's London flight. The name Jenkins had been highlighted with specific instructions to ensure the utmost privacy and discretion. The note had mentioned that Ms. Jenkins preferred not to be acknowledged as a VIP and would likely be traveling without an entourage, but that her comfort was to be given the highest priority. Elena's eyes widened as she realized exactly who was standing in their first-class cabin being told she didn't belong there. Amara's mind flashed back to a similar incident years ago. She had been 21, fresh out of MIT with a breakthrough algorithm and seeking investment for her fledgling company. She had booked a room at a luxury hotel where a major tech conference was being held, wanting to be close to the action and potential investors. Despite having a confirmed reservation, the front desk clerk had looked at her, young black, dressed in simple business casual attire, and claimed there was no record of her booking. He had suggested she try a more suitable hotel several blocks away. She had stood her ground then, too, asking to speak to a manager, producing confirmation emails, enduring the humiliating scrutiny of other guests waiting in line behind her. Eventually, they had found her reservation, but the damage was done. The message had been clear. You do not belong in spaces like this. That night, instead of networking at the conference mixer as planned, she had sat in her hotel room and coded until dawn, fueled by a quiet, cold determination. 6 months later, her algorithm had attracted the attention of a major tech incubator. 2 years after that, Quantum Velocity was valued at $120 million. Now, at 29, she was worth $4.8 billion, and the same hotels that had once questioned her presence sent her personal invitations whenever she traveled to their cities. Yet here she was again being asked to justify her existence in a space she had every right to occupy. Michael returned with the cabin supervisor, Dominic Lewis, a middle-aged man with graying temples and an expression that suggested he'd seen it all during his 20 years with the airline. What seems to be the issue, he asked, his tone professionally neutral. Before Amara could respond, Victoria launched into her version of events. This woman is insisting on taking my window seat. I've explained that I always sit by the window. It's in my customer profile. But she's being unreasonable. I've offered her 1B, which is perfectly acceptable, but she keeps making a scene. Dominic turned to Amara. Ms. Jenkins, Amara Jenkins. Ms. Jenkins, I understand your boarding pass indicates seat 1A, but in situations like this, we do try to accommodate our most frequent travelers. Ms. Blackwell is one of our Platinum Diamond Elite members, and so am I, Amara interrupted quietly. Dominic blinked, clearly not expecting this. I see. Well, nevertheless, we're approaching our departure time, and we need to resolve this quickly. Would you consider taking seat 1B as a courtesy? We'd be happy to offer you additional miles as compensation. Amara's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. Let me be clear. I booked seat 1A specifically for this flight. I'm not asking for special treatment based on status. I'm simply asking for the seat I reserved. Victoria, sensing her advantage slipping, decided to escalate. She stood abruptly, bringing herself uncomfortably close to Amara. Listen here. This is ridiculous. I have connections with your airline's executive team. One call from me and please don't stand so close to me, Amara said calmly. Victoria's eyes narrowed. Or what? You'll call security on me. She laughed, a harsh, artificial sound. People like you should be grateful for whatever seat you get. The fact that you're even in first class is probably some diversity initiative the airline is trying out. A collective intake of breath swept through the cabin. The mask had slipped, revealing the ugly prejudice beneath the veneer of procedural complaints. Ms. Blackwell Dominic began suddenly aware of how quickly the situation was deteriorating. That's not appropriate. But Victoria was past caring about appropriate. She reached out and placed a hand on Amara's arm, as if to physically move her aside. I said, "Move." The cabin went absolutely silent. Amara looked down at the hand gripping her arm, then up into Victoria's eyes. Her voice was soft but carried throughout the suddenly quiet cabin. That is the last time you will ever touch me. The quiet certainty in her tone made Victoria's confidence waver for the first time. There was something in those words. Not a threat, but a promise delivered with such conviction that it seemed to shift the very air in the cabin. Victoria released her grip, but her face hardened with renewed determination. Is that a threat? Are you threatening me now? Dominic, did you hear that? This woman just threatened me? But Dominic wasn't looking at Victoria anymore. His eyes were fixed on Amara, who had reached into her pocket and taken out her phone. Without a word, she pressed a single icon. Not the airline's customer service, but a private emergency protocol that only 5 people in the world had access to. The confrontation was about to take a turn that no one, least of all Victoria Blackwell, could have anticipated. Amara's phone connected immediately. She didn't speak right away, allowing the video call to establish a clear connection. The phone's screen was angled just enough that Victoria, Michael, and Dominic could see the person on the other end, a poised woman in her early 50s with silver-streaked dark hair, seated in what was unmistakably an executive office. Katherine, Amara said, simply addressing TransAtlantic Airways CEO directly. The entire first-class cabin could hear the response through the phone's speaker. Amara, is there a problem with the London flight? Katherine Montgomery's voice was concerned immediate and carried the unmistakable tone of someone addressing an equal, or perhaps even a superior. Victoria's face drained of color as recognition dawned. Her eyes darted from the phone to Amara's calm face, the pieces finally clicking into place. I need you to speak with your cabin crew on TA 492. Amara continued. There seems to be some confusion about assigned seating and passenger protocol. I'll handle it personally, Katherine replied without hesitation. Is that Victoria Blackwell I see in the background? Put her on the phone. Michael and Dominic stood frozen, their expressions a mixture of shock and dawning horror as they realized the magnitude of their misjudgment. The flight attendant and cabin supervisor exchanged panicked glances, suddenly understanding that they had just sided against one of the most important passengers the airline had ever carried. Victoria's hands began to tremble. I don't understand, she stammered, looking desperately at Dominic for support. But the supervisor had already taken 3 steps back, his complexion ashen. He knew exactly who Amara was now, and what this incident would mean for everyone involved. Katherine Victoria attempted, her voice now honeyed with panic. This is just a silly misunderstanding. What I understand? The CEO cut her off. Her voice now. ICE is that you physically accosted the founder of Quantum Velocity, our company's most valuable technology partner and the architect of a $7 billion deal that's about to transform global aviation. Is that accurate, Ms. Blackwell? The revelation hit the cabin like a shockwave. Passengers who had been pretending not to watch now openly stared. Jackson Palmer, the travel blogger still recording, whispered a stunned holy shit under his breath. Sofia Garcia, the lawyer who had spoken up earlier, nodded with grim satisfaction. Victoria's mouth opened and closed several times, no words emerging. Her carefully constructed world of privilege and entitlement was collapsing around her in real-time broadcast to an audience of first-class passengers, and thanks to Jackson's live stream, a rapidly growing online viewership. I had no idea she finally managed. She doesn't look like, she wasn't dressed like what Ms. Blackwell Katherine's voice was dangerously quiet. Like someone who deserves basic respect. Like someone who should be allowed to sit in the seat they reserved. From the galley, Elena Rodriguez watched with a mixture of vindication and professional concern. She had recognized Amara's name from the VIP briefing, but had been unable to intervene before the situation escalated. Now she caught Amara's eye and gave a small apologetic nod. Amara acknowledged it with the slightest tilt of her head, a silent exchange that spoke volumes. Amara, Katherine continued, I cannot begin to express my apologies. This is an inexcusable breach of our most basic service standards. I understand, Amara replied calmly, but I'm concerned about more than just my experience today. This incident reflects a pattern that affects many of your passengers, those who don't have the ability to call the CEO directly when they're discriminated against. Katherine nodded solemnly. You're absolutely right. This isn't just about one seat or one flight. This is about whether our airline wants to partner with companies that innovate only in the sky, or those who recognize that the most dangerous turbulence happens inside the cabin. The cockpit door opened with a decisive click. Captain Alicia Ramirez emerged, phone in hand, her face a mask of professional gravity. She had just received direct orders from the highest level of the company. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced to the now completely silent cabin, "this aircraft is returning to the gate. We apologize for the inconvenience, but there has been a serious breach of passenger conduct policy." Her eyes found Victoria. "Ms. Blackwell, upon arrival, airline security will escort you from this aircraft. Your TransAtlantic Airways status has been suspended pending review." The captain then turned to Amara, her demeanor shifting subtly. "Ms. Jenkins, on behalf of TransAtlantic Airways and Katherine personally, please accept our deepest apologies. We would be honored if you would still join us on this flight to London." Victoria made one final desperate attempt. "This is outrageous. Do you know how much money I spend with this airline every year? You can't treat me like this over a simple seat preference." "This isn't about a seat preference," Captain Ramirez replied firmly. "It's about physically grabbing another passenger, making discriminatory comments, and refusing to comply with assigned seating. Your behavior would result in removal regardless of who the other passenger was. The fact that you directed it toward Ms. Jenkins simply means the consequences will be more substantial." As the plane began its taxi back to the terminal, Victoria sank into seat 1B, suddenly small and deflated. The mask of entitlement had completely fallen away, revealing the insecurity beneath. She stared straight ahead, avoiding the gazes of the other passengers, many of whom were now openly recording the aftermath of her spectacular fall from grace. Amara remained standing still, composed, still dignified. She hadn't raised her voice once. She hadn't needed to. The quiet power she wielded, not just the billions in her bank account or the revolutionary technology her company had created, but the unwavering certainty of her own worth, had been more effective than any shouting match could ever be. Elena approached her discreetly. "Ms. Jenkins, would you like some water while we return to the gate?" Amara smiled, the first genuine expression she had shown since boarding. "Thank you, Elena. That would be lovely." The use of her name without having introduced herself wasn't lost on Elena. "You remember me from the Copenhagen flight last year?" she realized aloud. "Of course," Amara replied. "You were kind to an elderly passenger who was struggling with the entertainment system. Small acts of compassion stand out." As Elena went to fetch the water, Jackson Palmer cautiously approached. "Ms. Jenkins, I hope you don't mind that I recorded this. People need to see what happened here." "I don't mind," Amara said simply. Visibility creates accountability. The plane came to a stop at the gate. The door was opened and 2 security officers boarded, accompanied by a woman in a TransAtlantic Airways executive uniform. Victoria stood up shakily, gathering her belongings with trembling hands. "This isn't over," she muttered as she passed Amara. "Do you have any idea what kind of connections I have?" Amara met her gaze steadily. "The difference between us isn't that I can afford this seat," she said, her voice carrying just enough for the surrounding rows to hear. "It's that I understand every seat on this plane was built through someone's hard work, including yours. Respect isn't a luxury upgrade, Ms. Blackwell. It's the minimum requirement for the journey." Victoria had no response. Escorted by security, she walked down the aisle and out of the aircraft, the eyes of every passenger following her exit. As she disappeared through the door, a tension seemed to leave the cabin, as if everyone could finally breathe normally again. But the drama wasn't over. Through the same door Victoria had exited, a new figure appeared. Katherine Montgomery herself had come to the airport. The CEO of TransAtlantic Airways walked down the aisle of the first-class cabin with purpose, stopping directly in front of Amara. For a moment, the 2 women simply looked at each other. one in a tailored executive suit, the other in a casual hoodie and joggers, yet there was no question that they stood as equals. Amara Katherine said, extending her hand. "I wish we were meeting again under better circumstances." Katherine Amara replied, shaking her hand firmly. "So do I." Katherine turned to address the entire cabin, her voice carrying clearly to all passengers. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to personally apologize for the disruption to your journey today. What you witnessed was a complete failure of our service standards and our values as an airline." She paused, making eye contact with various passengers. "Ms. Jenkins is not just a valued passenger. She is the founder and CEO of Quantum Velocity, a company whose satellite navigation technology will revolutionize aviation safety. The $7 billion partnership between our organizations, which we'll be announcing officially next week, represents the most significant advancement in flight safety technology in decades." The cabin buzzed with whispers as passengers processed this information. Several were already typing frantically on their phones, either searching for information about quantum velocity or sharing what they had witnessed on social media. However, Katherine continued, "Ms. Jenkins should have received exemplary service, not because of who she is, but because she was a passenger with a valid ticket for her assigned seat. Every one of you deserves the same respect and dignity that was denied to her today." Michael Wilson stood at the back of the cabin, his face pale and drawn. Dominic Lewis beside him looked physically ill. Katherine noticed them and beckoned them forward. "Mr. Wilson, Mr. Lewis, please join me." The two men approached reluctantly, aware that every eye in the cabin was fixed on them. "You both failed today," Katherine said simply. "Not just Ms. Jenkins, but every passenger who witnesses discrimination and wonders if they'll be the next target. You will both be temporarily removed from this flight and will undergo comprehensive retraining before returning to service." Michael started to protest. "But Ms. Montgomery, we were just trying to resolve the situation quickly." "That's precisely the problem," Katherine interrupted. "You prioritized a quick solution over the right one. You valued the comfort of a passenger you perceived as important over the basic rights of another passenger. That's not just poor judgment, it's a fundamental violation of our core values." Dominic, more experienced and more aware of the severity of the situation, simply nodded. "We understand. I take full responsibility for my team's actions." Katherine turned back to the cabin. "Elena Rodriguez will be taking over as your lead flight attendant for this journey. We'll be bringing in a new team to assist her, which will cause a slight delay. However, I've arranged for complimentary refreshments to be served while you wait, and every passenger will receive 50,000 bonus miles as a token of our appreciation for your patience." This announcement was met with murmurs of approval. A 45-minute delay in exchange for a significant miles bonus was more than fair compensation in most travelers' eyes. Plus, they had witnessed a drama more entertaining than any in-flight movie, one that was already going viral on social media. Outside the aircraft in the terminal, Victoria Blackwell sat in a small waiting area surrounded by her luggage, her TransAtlantic Airways Platinum card cut in half on the table in front of her. A customer service representative was explaining in polite but firm terms that her membership had been suspended pending a full review, and that she would need to find alternative transportation for her journey to London. "This is absurd," Victoria kept repeating. "Do you have any idea who I am? Who I know?" The representative maintained professional composure. "Ms. Blackwell, your status with our airline has been suspended specifically because we do know who you are. Your behavior today was documented by multiple witnesses and violates our passenger code of conduct on several counts." Victoria pulled out her phone. "I'm calling Jerome Wellington right now. He's on your board of directors, and he's been my personal friend for 15 years. The representative didn't flinch. "You're welcome to call whomever you'd like, but our decision has been made at the highest level of the company. If you'd like to file a formal appeal, you can do so through our Customer Relations Department. As Victoria scrolled frantically through her contacts, the terminal TVs above her head switched to a breaking news alert. The chyron at the bottom of the screen read, "Tech Billionaire, Amara Jenkins, subjected to discrimination on TransAtlantic Airways. Flight, CEO personally intervenes." Victoria looked up just in time to see footage of herself grabbing Amara's arm, her face contorted with entitlement and rage. The clip had been taken from Jackson Palmer's live stream, which had already accumulated over 100,000 views in the 20 minutes since the incident. Her phone buzzed with an incoming call. The screen showed Jerome Wellington. Victoria answered eagerly. "Jerome, thank God." "You won't believe what's happening." "Victoria," the voice on the other end cut her off sharply. "I'm looking at a video of you assaulting Amara Jenkins. Do you have any idea who she is? What she means to Transatlantic's future?" "I didn't know." "That's not the point. Whether she was Amara Jenkins or any other passenger, your behavior was inexcusable. I'm calling to tell you I can't help you with this. In fact, I need to distance myself completely from the situation." Victoria's last hope crumbled. "Jerome, please, I'm sorry, Victoria. You're on your own with this one." The call ended. Back on the aircraft, a new flight crew had boarded to assist Elena. They moved efficiently through the cabin, serving drinks and answering questions, their professionalism a stark contrast to the tension of minutes before. Elena approached Amara, who had finally taken her rightful seat in 1A. "Is there anything I can get for you, Ms. Jenkins?" Amara looked up with a genuine smile. "Just a sparkling water, please." "And Elena, thank you for recognizing the situation for what it was." "I should have spoken up sooner," Elena admitted quietly. "Speaking up at all puts you ahead of most," Amara replied. "It takes courage to challenge established patterns, especially when they're reinforced by people in positions of authority." Elena nodded thoughtfully. "The new training program that's being mentioned. Will you be involved in that?" "Yes," Amara confirmed. "Katherine and I just discussed it. We'll be developing a comprehensive program that goes beyond superficial diversity training to address the root causes of these incidents." As Elena moved away to attend to other passengers, Jackson Palmer approached again, this time with his recording device put away. "Ms. Jenkins, my viewers would love to hear your perspective on what happened today. Would you consider a brief interview?" Amara considered for a moment. "Not about me personally, Mr. Palmer, but I would be willing to discuss the broader implications, how incidents like this reflect entrenched patterns that affect thousands of travelers who don't have the platform I do." "That's exactly the angle I was hoping for," Jackson said enthusiastically. "Whenever you're ready, just let me know." Captain Ramirez made a final announcement before returning to the cockpit. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've completed our crew change and will be departing shortly. Our estimated flying time to London remains 6 hours and 42 minutes. We appreciate your patience during this unexpected delay and look forward to providing you with excellent service for the remainder of our journey." As the aircraft pushed back from the gate for the second time, Amara gazed out of her window in her rightful seat, and felt a complex mixture of emotions. There was no satisfaction in Victoria's humiliation or in the crew members' punishment. What had happened today wasn't about individuals. It was about patterns, about invisible systems that predetermined who belonged where. She had won this particular battle, but the war was far larger than one seat on one flight. And as the plane lifted off, carrying her toward a business deal that would transform aviation safety forever, she was already thinking about how to leverage this incident into something more meaningful, a catalyst for change that would affect thousands of future journeys for thousands of passengers who didn't have the power to call a CEO when they were wronged. The atmosphere in the first-class cabin had transformed completely. Where tension had once hung heavy in the air, there was now an unusual sense of camaraderie, the kind that emerges when strangers share an extraordinary experience. Passengers who had previously been absorbed in their own private bubbles of privilege now engaged in hushed conversations discussing what they had witnessed and, more significantly, their own past observations of similar incidents. Elena Rodriguez moved through the cabin with a natural authority that her predecessor had lacked. Under her leadership, the service flowed seamlessly, attentive without being intrusive, professional without being cold. She had worked for TransAtlantic long enough to understand that true luxury wasn't about deferential treatment of those with status, but about providing equal excellence to all. Approximately 45 minutes into the flight after the meal service had been completed, Captain Ramirez emerged from the cockpit and made her way directly to Amara's seat. "Ms. Jenkins," she said quietly, "may I speak with you for a moment?" Amara nodded, and the captain took a seat across from her in the temporarily empty 1B. "I wanted to personally apologize for what happened before departure," Captain Ramirez began. "As the commanding officer of this aircraft, I'm ultimately responsible for everything that occurs on board, including the actions of my crew." Amara regarded her thoughtfully. "You responded decisively once you became aware of the situation, Captain. That counts for something." "Not enough," the captain replied firmly. "I should have been informed immediately when a seating dispute couldn't be resolved according to standard protocol. Mr. Wilson and Mr. Lewis failed to follow procedure, and I failed to ensure my crew was properly trained to handle such situations without bias." There was no defensiveness in her tone, no attempt to minimize the gravity of what had occurred. It was a straightforward acknowledgement of responsibility, and Amara respected her for it. "The incident today wasn't isolated," Amara said. "It's part of a pattern that affects countless travelers every day, most of whom don't have the platform or resources that I do." Captain Ramirez nodded. "I know. I've witnessed it throughout my career, first as a flight attendant, then as a first officer, and now as a captain. The aviation industry has a deeply entrenched culture of deference to certain types of passengers, often at the expense of others. And yet you chose to become a pilot," Amara observed. "Breaking barriers yourself." A small smile crossed the captain's face. "My father was a mechanic for Pan Am. He taught me that every part of the machine matters, from the engine to the smallest rivet. He also taught me that the people who fly on them matter whether they're in the front or the back." The parallel to Amara's own experience was striking. "My father was an aircraft mechanic too," she said softly, "for Continental before the merger." "Then you understand," Captain Ramirez said. "It's not just about flying the plane. It's about changing who gets to fly it, who feels welcome on board, who's treated with dignity, regardless of their appearance or background." Amara nodded. "That's precisely why I'm developing the Jenkins Protocol. It's not enough to just catch and punish individual acts of discrimination. We need to change the underlying culture that allows these incidents to occur in the first place." "Jenkins Protocol," the captain inquired. "A comprehensive training program being developed in partnership with TransAtlantic Airways," Amara explained. "It goes beyond superficial diversity training to address the root causes of bias in customer service environments. We're using data analytics to identify patterns of discriminatory treatment and implementing concrete strategies to counter them." Captain Ramirez looked impressed. "And TransAtlantic is fully on board with this?" "They are now," Amara said with a small smile. Today's incident made it clear that the alternative is too costly, both in terms of public relations and in potential lost business partnerships. The captain nodded thoughtfully. "If you need input from the flight operations side, I'd be honored to contribute. The cockpit has its own culture of exclusion that needs addressing. I'll keep that in mind, Captain. Thank you." As Captain Ramirez returned to the cockpit, Amara noticed Jackson Palmer approaching again, this time with his recording equipment ready. "Ms. Jenkins, if you're still willing to share your thoughts, my viewers are quite eager to hear them. The clip of the incident has already reached 500,000 views, and people are asking what happens next." Amara considered for a moment, then nodded. Let's do it. Jackson settled into the seat across from her and activated his camera. I'm here with Amara Jenkins, founder and CEO of Quantum Velocity, who earlier today experienced a disturbing incident of discrimination on TransAtlantic Airways flight TA492. Ms. Jenkins, thank you for speaking with me. Thank you for documenting what happened, Amara replied. Visibility is the first step toward accountability. For those just joining us, can you briefly describe what occurred? Amara recounted the events calmly and factually, without embellishment or accusation. She didn't dwell on Victoria's behavior or her own feelings, but instead focused on the structural issues the incident revealed. The problem isn't just one passenger or even one crew, she explained. It's a culture that automatically assumes certain people belong in certain spaces, while others don't. It's the immediate deference shown to someone based on their appearance, age, or perceived status, while others are required to continually justify their presence. How did it feel when the CEO of TransAtlantic personally intervened? Jackson asked. I was glad Katherine took immediate action, Amara said carefully. But I'm more interested in the long-term changes this incident might catalyze. Most passengers who experience discrimination don't have direct lines to airline CEOs. The real question is, how do we create systems where intervention from the top isn't necessary for passengers to be treated with dignity? And what's your answer to that question? Amara leaned forward slightly. Education, accountability, and structural change. That's why I'm working with TransAtlantic to develop the Jenkins Protocol, a comprehensive training program designed to identify and address patterns of bias in customer service environments. So you're turning this negative experience into positive change, Jackson observed. That's always been my approach, Amara replied. When I was 21, I was turned away from a hotel despite having a confirmed reservation. The clerk claimed there was no record of my booking and suggested I try a more suitable hotel several blocks away. That night, instead of networking at the tech conference I was attending, I sat in my eventually provided hotel room and coded until dawn. The algorithm I created that night became the foundation of Quantum Velocity's first breakthrough product. Jackson looked genuinely impressed. You channel discrimination into innovation. I channel it into transformation, Amara corrected gently. Not just of technology, but of systems that determine who has access to opportunities, who's believed when they speak, who's welcomed without question. As the interview concluded, a notification appeared on Amara's phone. It was a message from Katherine Montgomery. The board has unanimously approved the Jenkins Protocol initiative with an initial funding commitment of $15 million. They're convinced this is not just the right thing to do ethically, but the right move strategically. Victoria Blackwell's membership has been permanently revoked, and we're conducting a full audit of our customer service policies. This isn't just damage control, it's an opportunity to lead the industry in meaningful change. Amara showed the message to Jackson, whose eyebrows shot up. May I share this with my viewers? Yes, Amara decided. People need to see that speaking up can lead to real action. As the interview footage was uploaded and began circulating online, joining the already viral clips of the initial confrontation, Amara turned her attention to her upcoming business presentation. In a few hours, they would be crossing into European airspace, and she needed to be fully prepared for the consortium meeting that would determine the future of her company's most ambitious project yet. But even as she reviewed technical specifications and financial projections, part of her mind remained on the incident that had just unfolded. Today had been about more than a seat assignment. It had been about who gets to decide where people belong, about the subtle and not so subtle ways that access and opportunity are granted or denied based on appearance, about the courage it takes to stand up not just for yourself, but for a principle that affects countless others. And as the plane continued its journey across the Atlantic, carrying her toward a business triumph that would transform aviation safety forever, Amara Jenkins resolved that this incident would become more than a viral moment or a personal vindication. It would become a turning point. For an airline, for an industry, and for every passenger who had ever been made to feel they didn't belong. At 35,000 feet over the Atlantic Ocean, Amara Jenkins prepared for the most important business presentation of her career. The first-class cabin had settled into the rhythm of a long-haul flight. Window shades lowered, reading lights dimmed passengers, either sleeping or absorbed in their entertainment screens. Amara's mind, however, was razor-sharp, compartmentalizing the day's earlier confrontation and focusing entirely on the task at hand. She opened her laptop and activated a proprietary satellite connection, one of Quantum Velocity's early innovations that provided secure, high-speed internet access, regardless of location or altitude. On her screen, a countdown timer appeared 17 minutes until the video conference with the European Aviation Safety Consortium would begin. This wasn't just another investor pitch. The $7 billion deal on the table would transform global aviation safety, implementing Quantum Velocity's revolutionary atmospheric prediction technology across European airspace. The stakes couldn't be higher. Success meant not just financial triumph, but the potential to save countless lives by providing pilots with unprecedented advance warning of dangerous weather conditions. Failure meant years of development potentially wasted and a critical safety innovation delayed in reaching the market. Under normal circumstances, Amara would have been completely centered, her legendary focus unshakable. But today's confrontation had left invisible ripples in her usually calm mental state. Not anger or distress. She had experienced too many similar incidents to be thrown off balance by Victoria Blackwell's behavior, but a heightened awareness of what this deal truly represented. This wasn't just about technology or profit, it was about legacy, not just her own, but her father's. James Jenkins had died when Amara was 16, killed while performing emergency maintenance on a landing gear system during a severe thunderstorm. The aircraft had been diverted due to unexpected weather conditions, landing at an airport where the maintenance team wasn't fully prepared for the specific repair needed. James, always dedicated to passenger safety, had volunteered to go out in the storm. His last words to her that morning had been, "Remember, baby girl, planes don't care who built them or who flies them. They only care if you respect how they work." It was his voice she heard whenever she faced people like Victoria. Not urging vengeance, but reminding her of something more important. Systems matter more than individual battles. Change the system, and you change 1,000 outcomes at once. The satellite connection blinked green, indicating it was fully established. Amara took a deep breath, centering herself in the present moment. Whatever had happened earlier today, whatever prejudice she had faced, what mattered now was this presentation, this technology, this opportunity to create lasting change in an industry her father had given his life to. Elena appeared at her side with a fresh, sparkling water. "Everything all right, Ms. Jenkins?" "Yes, thank you, Elena. I'm about to begin a video conference. Could you ensure I'm not disturbed for the next hour?" "Of course. I'll let the other attendants know." Elena hesitated, then added, "Good luck with your presentation." "What you're doing, it matters." Amara smiled. "Thank you." As Elena moved away, Amara connected her secure headset and initiated the conference. Immediately, her screen filled with the serious faces of the consortium members, aviation regulators, safety experts, and investment partners from across Europe. Ms. Jenkins began Director Fournier of the European Aviation Safety Agency, his French accent precisely clipped. "We were beginning to wonder if there might be a delay." "No delay," Director Amara replied smoothly. "We're proceeding exactly as scheduled." She didn't mention the incident at JFK, the grounded flight, or the last-minute crew change. Those were irrelevant details now. What mattered was the technology, her technology, and its potential to transform aviation safety forever. For the next 45 minutes, Amara was in her element, presenting complex data with clarity and conviction. She demonstrated how quantum velocity's atmospheric prediction algorithm could identify dangerous weather patterns up to 18 minutes before conventional systems, providing critical additional time for flight crews to make safety decisions. As you can see, she explained, her cursor highlighting a swirling mass of air over a simulated Atlantic crossing. Conventional avionics show a moderate chance of turbulence in this sector in approximately 12 minutes. Our system AtmoSense is cross-referencing atmospheric data from 4 separate satellite layers and predicting a 97.8% probability of a severe microburst in precisely 8 minutes and 43 seconds. A skeptical banker from Frankfurt, Herr Werner, interjected, "A prediction is one thing, Ms. Jenkins. How can we be sure of its accuracy?" "An excellent question," Herr Werner Amara replied without missing a beat. "We can be sure because the system isn't just predicting. It's learning. Please observe." She input a command and a new simulation window opened. "I am now running our test flight path through the AtmoSense routing algorithm. It has plotted a new course, a deviation of only 4.2 degrees north that will not only bypass the microburst entirely, but will also, as you can see from the live fuel consumption projection, save this aircraft approximately 340 kilojoules of fuel. We're not just making the flight safer, we're making it more efficient and profitable." She continued demonstrating the system's fail-safe capabilities by simulating a catastrophic sensor failure. The consortium watched mesmerized as the AI instantly compensated its predictive algorithms, filling in the data gaps to maintain a perfectly stable flight path. It was a technological marvel, and she was its master. As she prepared to conclude, Herr Werner posed one final crucial question. "The technology is impressive, Ms. Jenkins. No one denies this. But the $6.5 billion investment is for a global rollout. What assurances do we have that quantum velocity can manage a project of this scale? You are, forgive me for being blunt, a very young company. The question wasn't just about business capacity. The unspoken subtext was clear. You are young. You are a woman. You are black. Can you really deliver?" It was the same doubt Amara had faced her entire career, from her first pitch meeting, where investors had asked to speak to the actual technical lead. It was her to conference panels where moderators addressed questions to her male colleagues rather than to today's confrontation on the plane. Amara met his gaze through the camera, her expression unwavering. "We are a young company, Herr Werner. But we were founded on principles of scalability and resilience, the same principles I've just demonstrated in our software. As for assurance, our launch partner, TransAtlantic Airways, has already committed to retrofitting their entire long-haul fleet of 178 aircraft at their own expense based on the success of our beta testing. Their CEO, Katherine Montgomery, is on standby to confirm that commitment. That is the confidence our partners have in us. I trust the consortium will find that assurance sufficient." It was the final unanswerable move. A checkmate. The consortium members exchanged looks. Director Fournier nodded slowly, a rare smile touching his lips. "Ms. Jenkins, this is revolutionary. The ESA is prepared to grant provisional certification for fleet-wide testing." Herr Werner leaned forward, his skepticism replaced by keen interest. "Our syndicate is in. The full $6.5 billion is approved. Contracts will be drawn up by morning London time." A quiet, profound sense of victory washed over Amara. She had weathered the storm, both the one in the cabin and the one over the Atlantic. "Thank you, everyone," she said, a genuine radiant smile finally appearing. "Welcome to the future of safer skies." After the call ended, she leaned her head back and allowed the immense tension to drain from her body. She had done it. Not just secured the deal, but done so hours after enduring a public confrontation that would have left most people too shaken to function effectively. But then Amara Jenkins had never been most people. A notification appeared on her tablet. A news alert from the aviation daily breaking quantum velocity secures $6.5 billion deal with European Aviation Consortium. The news was already public moving at the speed of digital information crossing oceans and continents while she was still in mid-flight. A second notification followed immediately, trending Black Tech CEO faces discrimination on transatlantic flight hours before closing historic aviation deal. The two stories were spreading in parallel across the internet. One about technological innovation, the other about social injustice. Two sides of the same reality, two dimensions of the same journey. Captain Ramirez emerged from the cockpit and walked to Amara's seat. "I just received a message from Ms. Montgomery," she said quietly. "Congratulations on securing the European deal. She sends her heartfelt congratulations and her renewed apologies for what you endured today. Please thank her for me," Amara said, her voice soft with fatigue. "And thank you, Captain. Your decisiveness was the pivot on which this entire day turned. It's my job to manage my aircraft and protect my passengers. I just regret I didn't recognize the true nature of the situation sooner." The captain hesitated for a moment. "If I may be so bold, why do you do it? Travel this way. You could have a private jet, a full security detail. You could avoid people like Victoria Blackwell altogether." Amara turned to look out the window at the vast, star-dusted darkness. "My father was a mechanic for an airline," she said, her voice becoming more personal, more reflective. "He loved planes. He taught me that every part of the machine matters from the engine to the smallest rivet. He also taught me that the people who fly on them matter whether they're in the front or the back. When I fly commercial, I see the machine and the people up close. I get an unfiltered view of how my own technology is working, how the crews are performing, how the passengers are feeling. It keeps me grounded." She turned back to the captain. "What happened today was ugly, but it was also data. It showed me a flaw in the system. A young flight attendant, intimidated by a display of wealth and privilege, almost made a decision that could have cost this airline billions. That's a training issue, a cultural issue, and it's my problem to help solve as a partner. So in a way, Mrs. Blackwell gave me something of value today, a very clear and expensive field test." Captain Ramirez was speechless, humbled by the depth and strategic brilliance of the young woman before her. It wasn't just about humility. It was about intelligence. "Ms. Jenkins," she said finally, "it has been an honor to fly you." As dawn broke over the Irish Sea, painting the clouds in brilliant hues of orange and gold, Amara saw her destination ahead. She had secured a transformative business deal, stood firm against discrimination, and laid the groundwork for lasting change, all while crossing an ocean at 35,000 feet. Not a bad day's work, even for a billionaire. Upon landing at Heathrow, there would be no normal gate for flight TA-492. As a final gesture from a deeply apologetic Katherine Montgomery, the Boeing 777 taxied to a private diplomatic stand. A sleek black Rolls-Royce was waiting on the tarmac, a stark contrast to Amara's anonymous arrival in New York. As passengers prepared to disembark, Captain Ramirez made one final announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to London Heathrow Airport. Local time is 7:42 a.m. and the temperature is a pleasant 18 degrees Celsius. On behalf of TransAtlantic Airways, I want to thank you for your patience during our unusual departure process from New York. As a token of our appreciation, each of you will receive 50,000 bonus miles credited to your account." She paused before continuing, her voice taking on a more personal tone. "I also want to take a moment to acknowledge something important. Many of you witnessed an incident before our departure that reflected poorly on our airline's values. I want you to know that what you saw is not who we aspire to be. As of this morning, TransAtlantic Airways is initiating a comprehensive review of our training programs and customer service protocols led by Ms. Amara Jenkins of Quantum Velocity, to ensure that every passenger receives the respect and dignity they deserve, regardless of their appearance or background. The cabin erupted in spontaneous applause. Jackson Palmer, still documenting the journey, captured the moment for his millions of followers. Sofia Garcia, the lawyer who had spoken up during the confrontation, caught Amara's eye and gave her a respectful nod. Elena approached with Amara's backpack. "Your car is waiting, Ms. Jenkins. There's a VIP team to escort you through immigration. You won't need to go through the main terminal." "Thank you, Elena." Amara took her bag and then added, "I meant what I said about your role in our new training initiative. If you're interested, Katherine will be in touch." Elena's eyes widened. "I would be honored." As the aircraft door opened, Amara was met by a TransAtlantic Airways executive team, led by the company's director of customer experience, who personally escorted her to the waiting car. The contrast with her treatment in New York could not have been more stark. From being told she didn't belong in first class to receiving VIP treatment typically reserved for visiting dignitaries. In the car, Amara found a handwritten note from Katherine Montgomery. "The Jenkins Protocol has been approved with an initial budget of $15 million. This isn't just about today or about you. It's about transforming our entire approach to service. Your father would be proud. K." The note touched something deep in Amara's heart. Her father had never lived to see her success, never witnessed the empire she had built from a single algorithm coded in a college dorm room. But perhaps he was witnessing it now through the lives that would be saved by her technology and through the doors that would be opened by her advocacy. As the car glided through London's morning traffic toward her hotel, Amara's phone buzzed with messages from her executive team, all congratulating her on securing the European deal. Among them was a message from her COO, David Marshall. "You did it. Mara, $6.5 billion secured. Also, have you seen what's happening online? Hashar Amarar. Jenkins and Hashar Seat Justice are trending worldwide. Over 2 million views of the incident video. People are calling you an icon for standing your ground with such dignity." Attached was a screenshot of Twitter where the hashtags #RespectIsNot. An upgrade and the Jenkins Protocol were gaining momentum. The confrontation had struck a chord with millions who had experienced similar treatment, being judged, dismissed, or disrespected based on their appearance rather than their humanity. Amara scrolled through some of the comments. Watching this powerful black woman stand her ground without raising her voice or losing her dignity was the most inspiring thing I've seen all year. At Amara Jenkins. I've been that flight attendant who chose expediency over justice. No more. #The Jenkins Protocol can't come soon enough. TransAtlantic Airways just earned my business forever. This is how you handle discrimination. Swift, decisive action from the top. #Corporate accountability. The story had transcended a simple seat dispute. It had become a symbol of something much larger. The daily indignities faced by countless travelers who didn't fit the narrow profile of what belonging in premium spaces looked like, and the possibility of creating real, meaningful change in response. Upon reaching her hotel, the Dorchester Amara was greeted by the general manager himself. "Ms. Jenkins, welcome. We've been expecting you. Your suite is ready and the conference room has been prepared for your team meeting at 11 a.m. "Thank you," Amara replied simply. In her suite, she finally allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. The past 24 hours had been extraordinary, even by her standards. From being told she didn't belong in a seat she had rightfully reserved to closing a multi-billion-dollar deal that would transform aviation safety forever. Through it all, she had maintained her composure, her dignity, and most importantly, her focus on the bigger picture. Victoria Blackwell had seen a young black woman in casual clothes and made assumptions about her worth, her status, her very right to exist in a space designed for people who matter. What Victoria hadn't realized was that Amara's apparent casualness was itself a choice. The choice of someone so secure in her worth that she didn't need external validation. someone who had learned long ago that true power doesn't announce itself with logos or labels, but with quiet confidence and unwavering purpose. After a quick shower and change of clothes, Amara sat down at the suite's desk and began typing. Not emails to her team or notes for her upcoming meetings, but the initial framework for what would become the Jenkins Protocol, a comprehensive training program designed to identify and address patterns of bias in customer service environments. The protocol wasn't about punishing individual employees who made mistakes. It was about changing the underlying assumptions that led to those mistakes in the first place. It was about creating systems where respect wasn't a luxury upgrade but the default setting for every human interaction. As she worked, a notification appeared on her tablet. A breaking news alert with her name in the headline, "Tech Billionaire, Amara Jenkins launches bias training initiative after viral discrimination incident." The accompanying article included statements from Katherine Montgomery. What happened to Ms. Jenkins was inexcusable, but unfortunately not unique. The Jenkins Protocol represents our commitment to ensuring it never happens again, not just on our airline, but across the entire industry. The article also mentioned that several other major airlines had already reached out expressing interest in implementing the protocol once developed, recognizing that in an age of viral videos and instant accountability, addressing bias wasn't just ethically right, but strategically necessary. Amara's phone rang, her executive assistant Tariq calling from New York. "Mara, the European deal is officially signed. The funds will be transferred by end of business today. And Katherine Montgomery has issued a formal press release about the Jenkins Protocol initiative. This is happening fast. Good." Amara replied simply, "Have the legal team prepare the partnership agreement with TransAtlantic. Standard terms, but include a clause about exclusive implementation rights for the first 6 months." "Already done," Tariq confirmed. "Also, you should know that Victoria Blackwell has been trying to reach out through various channels. Apparently, she's been placed on unpaid leave from Pinnacle Financial, pending an investigation into the incident. Several of their major clients have expressed concerns about having their portfolios managed by someone who demonstrated such poor judgment publicly." Amara considered this. Victoria's behavior had been inexcusable, but the point wasn't to destroy her life. It was to create change that would prevent such incidents in the future. "If she reaches out directly, I'll speak with her," Amara decided. Not for reconciliation, but for education. Sometimes the most powerful advocates for change are those who have experienced the consequences of resistance firsthand. As she ended the call, Amara walked to the window of her suite, gazing out at the London skyline. The city where she was about to implement revolutionary aviation safety technology was now also the launching point for a different kind of revolution. One focused not on the skies, but on the ground, on the daily human interactions that determined who felt welcome and who felt excluded, who was believed and who was questioned, who belonged without explanation, and who had to continually justify their presence. What had begun as a simple seat assignment dispute had evolved into something much more significant, a moment of reckoning for an entire industry, a catalyst for examining deeply entrenched patterns of behavior that affected thousands of travelers every day. And as the morning sun illuminated the historic city below, Amara Jenkins felt a profound sense of purpose. Today, she would finalize a business deal that would save countless lives through improved aviation safety. But the Jenkins Protocol might ultimately have an even broader impact, changing not just how people flew, but how they treated each other along the journey, that she thought would be a legacy her father would truly be proud of. 3 months after the incident that went viral across the globe, Amara Jenkins stood in a training room at TransAtlantic Airways' London headquarters. Around her 30 flight attendants, gate agents, and customer service representatives listened intently as she explained the core principles of the Jenkins Protocol. The goal isn't to police language or create artificial scripts, she was saying. It's to recognize the unconscious patterns that influence how we perceive and treat different passengers. Who do we automatically assume belongs in first class? Who do we question? Whose complaints do we take seriously and whose do we dismiss? Elena Rodriguez, newly promoted to training director, stood beside her. In the aftermath of the incident, Elena had emerged as a natural leader for the initiative, combining her frontline experience with a genuine commitment to creating change. What we're implementing isn't just another corporate diversity program, Elena added. It's a fundamental reimagining of what service means, moving from a hierarchy based on status and appearance to one based on the simple premise that every passenger deserves equal dignity and respect. The program had already shown remarkable results. In the first 2 months after implementation, customer satisfaction scores among minority passengers had increased by 23%. Seat assignment disputes had decreased by 42%. More importantly, the culture was shifting. Crew members were increasingly comfortable speaking up when they witnessed problematic interactions, creating a self-reinforcing environment of accountability. As the training session concluded, Amara checked her phone to find a notification that made her smile. The AtmoSense technology, now fully implemented across TransAtlantic's fleet, had just successfully predicted and helped avoid severe turbulence over the North Atlantic, potentially preventing dozens of injuries. The dual legacies of that fateful flight, technological innovation and cultural transformation, were both bearing fruit. Outside the training room, Katherine Montgomery was waiting. "I thought you might like to see this," she said, handing Amara a tablet. On the screen was a financial report showing TransAtlantic's quarterly results. Despite initial concerns that the public incident might harm the airline's reputation, the opposite had occurred. Bookings had increased by 8%, with passenger surveys specifically citing the airline's response to the incident and implementation of the Jenkins Protocol as factors in their choice. "Turns out doing the right thing is good business," Katherine observed. "It always is in the long run," Amara replied. "People respond to authenticity and accountability." Katherine nodded. "There's something else. Victoria Blackwell has reached out again. She's completed the sensitivity training program we required and has asked to participate in the Jenkins Protocol as a case study presenter. She wants to use her experience to help others recognize their biases." Amara considered this for a moment. Redemption is always possible. If she's sincere, let her contribute. Later that evening, as Amara's private car took her to Heathrow for her flight back to New York, she scrolled through her messages. There was one from Captain Ramirez, now the senior pilot advisor for the Jenkins Protocol, sharing that 6 other major airlines had formally requested to implement the program. There was also an unexpected message from Jackson Palmer, the travel blogger whose video had helped bring the incident to global attention. "Thought you might like to know. A 12-year-old black girl in Atlanta saw your story and decided to start coding. She told her local news station, 'If Amara Jenkins can stand her ground in first class, I can build my own tech company too. Your impact goes far beyond airlines and algorithms. Safe travels, Ms. Jenkins.' Attached was a clip of the young girl, her eyes bright with determination, as she declared her ambitions to the world. Amara felt a sudden tightness in her throat. This was the true measure of impact. Not billions in bank accounts or revolutionary technologies, but the quiet ripple effect of standing firm in one's dignity, showing others what was possible. As her car approached the terminal, Amara noticed something different. The TransAtlantic Airways first-class check-in area had been redesigned. Gone were the intimidating counters that created an atmosphere of exclusivity and judgment. Instead, the space was open, welcoming, designed to make every passenger feel valued, regardless of what they wore or how they looked. A small plaque near the entrance read, "The Jenkins Standard Dignity is not an upgrade." Amara smiled. 3 simple months ago, she had been told she didn't belong in a seat she had rightfully reserved. Today, her name defined the standard for how an entire airline, soon to be an entire industry, treated its passengers. As she walked through the terminal, Amara thought of her father. He had taught her that planes don't care who built them or who flies them. They only care if you respect how they work. What he might not have foreseen was how his daughter would extend that principle beyond the machinery to the human systems that operated them, creating an environment where respect wasn't determined by appearance or status, but was the fundamental right of every person who stepped aboard. In the end, the incident that had begun with "this seat isn't meant for people like you" had transformed into a movement that declared unequivocally that every seat, whether in an aircraft, a boardroom, or society itself, was meant for anyone with the rightful claim to occupy it. And as Amara Jenkins boarded her flight home, taking her seat in 1A without question or challenge, she knew that the true power of what she had accomplished wasn't in winning one confrontation on one flight. It was in changing the journey for countless passengers who would never know her name, but would benefit from the quiet revolution she had sparked with nothing more than dignity, determination, and the unwavering belief that respect shouldn't be a luxury upgrade. It should be the standard for every human interaction. "Your seat, Ms. Jenkins," the flight attendant said with a genuine smile. "Welcome aboard." Indeed, Amara thought. My seat, as it should be for everyone. The story of Amara Jenkins reminds us that true power often comes in unexpected packages. It's not about flashy displays of wealth or status, but about knowing your worth and standing firm when others try to diminish it. Amara could have compromised, could have taken another seat to avoid confrontation, but she recognized that doing so would reinforce a pattern that affects countless travelers every day. Her response, calm, measured, but unwavering, transformed what could have been just another incident of discrimination into a catalyst for industry-wide change. The Jenkins Protocol now sets the standard for how airlines treat their passengers, ensuring that dignity and respect aren't luxuries reserved for those who look a certain way, but the fundamental right of everyone who boards a flight. What can we learn from Amara's experience? That sometimes standing your ground isn't just about claiming your own space. It's about creating space for others who will come after you. That real change doesn't come from reacting emotionally, but from responding strategically. And most importantly, that the most powerful response to prejudice isn't outrage, but excellence. Have you ever experienced a situation where you were made to feel you didn't belong somewhere you had every right to be? How did you respond? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might give someone else the courage to stand firm the next time they face similar treatment. If Amara's story resonated with you, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. Your support helps us continue bringing these important stories to light. In our next video, we'll share the story of a Black hospital director who was mistaken for a janitor, and how his response saved the very doctor who disrespected him. Turn on notifications so you don't miss it. Remember, when we speak up with dignity and purpose, we don't just change one moment or one flight. We help build a world where everyone can travel through life with the respect they deserve. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.